there was a group of people back in the mid-90s that all came together, the University of Minnesota, the State of Minnesota, University of Minnesota Extension, I think even Dayton-Hudson Company got a grant from the Department of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Commerce, to do a project called Access Minnesota. And it was literally to bring a 56 kilobit line of internet to every county seat in Minnesota. The first internet, really, that was kind of public, I guess, and that was back in 1995, 96. And everybody's really excited because particularly from the standpoint of an engaged and informed citizenry, having access to this new technology, which was all about sharing information, was really important because I think it was Thomas Jefferson who, I'm not going to get the phrase right, but it was basically about, an educated and informed public is what helps make good decisions. So we worked really hard on getting the internet to every county in Minnesota. And then, the whole thing exploded into the World Wide Web, and now everybody's got a smartphone, and, it's just sort of second nature. And, I remember the days, I'm old enough to remember when, the way that you got messages was somebody handed you a pink slip and said, you have a message. And now it's like, oh, I've got a message, I've got a text, whatever. And I started to think about that in terms of how do we engage as a citizen with this technology, which can be both a distraction and a way that kind of channels you off into your own specific kind of self-interest. The great thing about having like 4 major networks when I was growing up was that if you watched the evening news with Walter Cronkite, you knew that a lot of other Americans were watching the evening news, and they were hearing some of the same things that were really some of the key issues of the day, I guess. And now we have multiple, thousands, millions of channels, billions actually, if you think about it, because everybody has their own Facebook page or their blog or what have you. And so how do we, as a group of people wanting to accomplish things, as citizens, come together when there's so many channels that pull you off. So I think that's one of the challenges of our day and age, now that we've got this both incredible tool for organizing through the internet, through all the, as I call them, sort of community informatic tools to bring people together as a community, but also to think about things outside of our own somewhat narrow self-interest, and to realize particularly about our sort of physical surroundings and our physical community. It really takes some intentionality, I think, and awareness now to remember that, oh, I have to pay attention to voting and to the road project, just down the block from my house, even though I am also centered on all sorts of issues that may be across the ocean, because I am now so connected to the world. So I think that's a challenge for us, is how do we stay connected locally so that we can be good stewards and still have that sense of common purpose about the places that we live in.
Do you think that, manifests itself in there's more opportunities for you to listen to like-minded people, and so it's like the likelihood that you're going to hear a cohesive argument that somebody disagrees with you and actually pay attention to it probably exists less?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point about how it's real easy in our day and age right now to just listen to people who think like I do, to stay in a couple of tracks of information where I am not being disagreed with, and people have talked about how they don't really like to use the telephone anymore because it takes too much time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what does that do for, when we have face-to-face conversations about, how do we agree to disagree civilly, so that we're not becoming so partisan on one side or the other, both sort of politically and just about issues in general. So I think, I've often said to myself, we don't have to choose to go so far with technology and so fast. We can slow down. We can, why is it that everything has to be so fast? And I've really thought a lot about reflection lately. And one of the things I've been working on in my work in community development actually is trying to combine community development with systems thinking, which really originated with Peter Senge at MIT as a way for corporations and organizations to kind of, I think in a way, slow down and look at the whole picture and how everything relates. And I think that as a citizen, you do a better job if you are a systems thinker, if you see how things relate and how, yes, you play a role, but your role ripples with other people, and therefore you really need to learn how to get along with people that aren't the same as you, maybe. Which is why I think it's really important for people to travel. Travel not only outside of your city, outside of your state, outside of your country, outside of your neighborhood. I mean, go to, we have the largest Somali population here outside of Somalia. Practically the same thing with Hmong people. We, despite our reputation as being a kind of white flyover state, we have an incredible amount of diversity in this state, and we should really make use of that diversity to help teach ourselves about how people from different cultures think about things differently and approach things differently. And the Western way of meeting, for example, is not necessarily the same as how Somali people decide things, and based on a cultural experience that's vastly different than the American way from our Revolutionary War on up. So yeah, I think that we really have to take care and reflect and not just react to things, and listen. That's if I could tell young people one thing, is learn how to listen. Learn how to listen really well. And one of your questions was how can we prepare to enter another community respectfully? I think anybody who does community work, anybody who does civic engagement of one kind or another, really needs to learn how to listen and how to just be with people where they are, and not try to make them into something that you want them to be because of your own ideas of how things should be, but to just have that patience and listen and learn from other people.